Evolution.org Hardcore 2.0 is coming your way. This is episode 145. Today we're talking about how to gain a lot of mass on a cycle by Para Pharma. So today we're going to discuss lean gains versus bulk. We're going to have the discussion about that. We're going to talk about how to train and diet for gaining mass. We're going to talk about big as a house on steroids from Para Pharma. We're going to talk about different steroids for that. And we're going to talk about the steroids you want for lean gains from Para Pharma. And then we're going to touch on more about Para Pharma. For those of you who haven't heard about them before, we're going to talk about why their products are so trusted by many out there. So first, let's start with the first topic: lean gains versus bulk. Mobster, take the floor on this one.
Right. So regular listeners will know that I'm a fan of Iron Game history, and Steve and I have done shows when we talked about lean gains and mass and getting bigger, etc. And an observation of Steve kind of applies here. So back in the day, and the favorite topic of conversation in that regard, Steve, was always the 1970s, aka the era of Arnold Schwarzenegger and pumping iron. There are pictures from the 50s, which are great examples, in fact. I've seen this come up as a meme on Facebook and on Instagram, where there's a photograph of a load of people on the boardwalk on the sand of a beach at some seaside resort. And the comment challenge is, please find someone who's obese in this photograph. There's a kind of another meme, Steve, where there's a photograph of a fat person, and it's literally from a freak show or a circus back in the day. And the joke is, I'm bigger than that right now, and I haven't even left the house. I'm the fattest person I know. So Steve's commented in the past that, and I agree with him, whether it's the United States of America, aka the domestic market, or the international market, including over in the UK, obesity is kind of more of an issue than it's ever been. And I'll get Steve to talk about that momentarily. But the thing of it is, back in the day, and probably up to my time, Steve, when I first started training in the 1980s, the idea of bulking up was a thing. The idea of getting big just for being big's sake was very much a thing. It's kind of my thing now, Steve, but I can afford to be that way as a strength-orientated athlete. The reality of the situation is probably from about 2000, 2010, certainly onwards, we see far more people that want to lose weight than people that are gaining mass just for the sheer idea of gaining mass. Now, there's still an aspect which is important to go over, insofar as it is easier to add muscular gains. And I'm thinking as a professional open class type bodybuilder, where you're not weight capped, you're not height capped, you are literally just trying to get as big and as muscular as you possibly can, with one hopes, for the judges' sake, some sort of aesthetics going on. And there's an argument to be made that having a little bit of adipose tissue, a little bit of water, a little bit of fat, kind of spares energy and makes it that little bit easier to add muscle. It's kind of more difficult if you're super ripped. Equally, if you're super ripped and you had a couple of pounds of muscle in the right places, it's a lot easier to see what's going on. But we're going to talk about both of these kind of aspects. Let me bring Steve in specifically to talk about, in generalized terms, Steve, the obesity crisis, and how in bodybuilding today, it is few people are really going out of their way to get as big as they possibly can just for the sake of being huge. And then we're going to talk about what it feels like being huge and bulked up and so on.
Yeah, and if you look at pictures of your parents when they were younger or your grandparents when they were younger, back in those days, big family albums, I always challenge people on this who tell me, "Oh, Steve, I got fat genetics." And I always challenge them and I say, you know what, pull up an old family album of your family from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, and look at what they look like. It's very weird if you had anyone in those pictures who was overweight. Nowadays in America, unless you go to like Southern California or maybe Miami, South Beach, or you go to another healthier part of America, it's very rare that you see someone who isn't overweight. If you see a family album of today, most people would be overweight. We've seen pictures of guys on the forum post their Thanksgiving pictures of their family. They've posted pictures of their Christmas parties that they've done, and their entire family is overweight. And a lot of times, it's middle America, the middle America of overeating, eating a lot of the wrong things, not exercising enough to compensate for that. And the funny thing in America, we have more gyms, CrossFit studios, yoga studios, everything. We have more yoga studios in America than there are in India. And there's more people per square foot in India than there is here. And if you factor in that, we still have more yoga studios. We have more gyms than every other country out there. We have more CrossFit places than any other country out there. We have more warehouse gyms. We have strength gyms. We have every gym. Everyone wants to open up a gym. Every former athlete wants to open up a gym. Every person who's into fitness wants to open up a gym. Mobster in the past wanted to open up a gym. I wanted to open up a gym. I was talking to someone. We almost put thousands of dollars together to open up our own gym. So it's all over America, yet we're still so fucking overweight. So it's the food. I mean, it's the food, the ease of getting food. So you have to separate when we talk about this topic, lean gains versus bulk. The objective is to gain quality mass, not dirty mass. It's not doesn't look good to have your muscles covered up by fat. So when we talk about putting on mass, I don't care if you're skinny as a rail, and I don't care if you're moderately sized, and I don't care if you're overweight. No matter what the situation, we want to put on quality mass. I've seen so many skinny dudes hop on gear. They started out on 150, 160 pounds. They hopped on gear. They blew up to a 180, 190, 200 or more. I've seen guys at 5'7", 5'8", blow up to 220 pounds, and they look like shit. They look like big donuts. They've got the moon face. They got water retention. I've done it before when I first got into it. You go because you're so sick of being skinny and weak that you just go overboard and you eat way too much food. You take a lot of the wrong steroids. You don't control your estrogen. You blow up like a balloon. We see this all the time. I've seen guys in gym show up and I ain't seen them in a month. Maybe, they start working out in the morning instead of the afternoon. I'm like, dude, man, you put on a lot of size. Like, look at that. And then a month later, they deflated. The balloon deflated once they came off the gear. All that gains that they put on was gone. So because it was all water weight. So we want to put on the lean, quality, keepable muscle mass. We don't necessarily want to put on the sloppy weight. So we're going to talk about the different steroids later in the podcast. But look, at the end of the day, some of you are going to want to put on the sloppy mass because you're just so sick. You just want to move the scale. You're like, hey, you know what? I want to gain 20 pounds on this cycle. I don't care. So we're going to talk about that as well. But over the long term, it makes more sense to put quality gains and be patient and take your time and do it that way rather than just put on a bunch of weight in a short amount of time. It makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense and it's healthier for you to do it that
Yes.
way.
Something Steve said on another show, I think kind of applies here, Steve. But we haven't got we want, and what we've got we don't want. It's kind of weird. So if you started out super skinny, which of course is becoming rarer, the idea of being big as a house and walking around, I think C.T. Fletcher said, and I quote, cracking the motherfucking footpath, cracking the paving stones or something like that, and being that goddamn big and that goddamn strong, it's kind of sexy in your mind. The reality is slightly different, and we'll touch on that. And I'm also thinking historically again, Steve. Back in the day, I remember reading 50s and 60s bodybuilding shows, and there was a couple where they were referring to it wasn't uncommon to see guys turn up, and because they didn't want to be outsized, they would turn up and they would have multiple jumpers on, multiple sweaters, and sometimes they would cut these sweaters in such a way so they'd have 2 or 3 layers, extra layers on, and they looked bigger. And you realise that you'd seen this guy down the gym, and you say, "There's no motherfucking way that guy looks like that. What the fuck is he doing? He's got like an extra thick sweater on, and he's got something on underneath which is kind of fleecy." And he literally was because he didn't want to be outsized. His confidence was such that he knew that if he turned up to this professional or even high quality amateur show, he wanted to appear like he knew he'd been training for a while and he had good development, etc. And they were literally wearing cut off tops and jumpers, but they cut the sleeves down underneath another jumper and so on to make their arms and their chest and their back look broad. The reality of the situation, of course, is that's kind of crazy. And you're just looking at them going, what the fuck are they doing? You know what they're doing. You're not going to go up, point at them and laugh or whatever else, but it's like, okay, we get it. So there is a certain sexiness, I will say, a certain idea behind the sheer mass. I'm fortunate enough again, and of course, Instagram helps. You can look at the Nick Walkers. Nick Walker's never going to have the sort of tiny waist aesthetic. And the idea of walking around with thighs that big and that kind of thick of an arm and that kind of thick of a chest, etc. And again, if you're a skinny guy, if you're slightly underweight, is, oh my God, what does that feel like being that size? Can he wipe his own ass, etc., etc.? The thing of it is, and this is how kind of weird it is, Steve. As regular listeners will know, I'm well over 300 pounds. You just get fucking used to it. It becomes your normal. For me to kind of feel stupidly huge, I'd probably need to be 350, 360. And I've been around people that body weight. And again, it's the 10-inch wrist, 9-inch wrist. My wrists are over 8 inches. I've just kind of got used to being what the size that I am. And you know, I think apart from the occasion when I'm trying to get, you know, some decent trousers to wear or a jacket that matches a trousers that's not 14 sizes different or something, but most of the time it's fairly easy to accommodate. I might have the occasional problem that's more height related and the length of my arms or the length of my legs, my limbs, than it is muscle size, getting into certain machines and on certain pieces of equipment. But I'm not freakishly big. 20, 30 years ago, I would be freakishly big. I'm not freakishly big now. And I think that the thing of it is, and just to expand on something that Steve said before we talk about anything else, at some point, especially if you've gone mass gains, don't give a fuck how it looks kind of mad. And this actually used to happen back in the day, Steve. If people got too goddamn sloppy, all you're doing is making the dieting down to get into the condition part that much harder. So with the obesity crisis that we've touched upon and this reality, I mean, look, let's say that I decided to compete as a professional bodybuilder. Do I want to diet for 22, 23, 24 weeks? Or would I prefer to diet for 16 weeks, which is more common? If I was already 9, 10%, would I prefer to diet for 12 weeks? It might be 12 hard weeks, 16 weeks would be easier to get down below 8%, down to 6, 5, and 4. It's a lot easier, guys. It's a lot easier. And it's become amongst those that were kind of skinny and added lean muscle. Let's be honest, Steve, not everybody wants to be a 300-pound freak. I would argue, male, female, gay, straight, whatever, you will get more ass if you kind of fit into what we would call just a slight extreme of normal. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about a person you see on the beach. You very rarely see a heavyweight Olympic lifter or strongman or professional bodybuilder. What you will see, and what seems to be the most attractive for most people, and this is still going to be a high percentage of our listeners in this particular regards, is going to be the guy with a slightly wider than normal shoulder set, a tanned muscular chest, the beginnings of, if not the full-blown six-pack, and relatively, I mean relatively slim hips. We are not talking dad bods here. And especially for our younger listeners, the 25, 26-year-olds, 18 to 25-ish, that's probably going to be the fucking look that gets you asked. It's going to have your bros bumping fists. It's going to have people inviting you to certain sports things. You're going to be going to more pool parties and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If you started out, so let's say you were 6'3" like I am, Steve, and 175 when I was 18, I started at 15, and I put on 5 or 10 pounds of tissue. I literally could tell the story of having girls, one that I knew, plus 2 of her buddies, looking at my abs while I'm leaning on the balcony, looking down at these girls with a tan on, and that was probably my quote unquote normal, sexiest look versus me doing that now at 320, 330 pounds. Huge, but no six pack. And it would attract some kind of women, but it wouldn't have got me the kind of ass that I'd have got if I had that kind of muscular thing going on as I did when I was in my very late teens, early 20s. So yeah, talk
Well, you
about
have
that a bit too.
yeah, you have that big biker look, the big bald
Oh, I
biker
do
tough
now.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
when I was on a dating website, and I actually used to have a bit of fun with this. I actually got told exactly what Steve said. I think they had an idea that I was the sort of person that would ride a Harley,
Yeah.
or they could see me in a leather jacket, and I was sort of mean and horrible
Well,
looking.
the
But
type of woman that likes that,
yeah,
the woman with
yeah.
the neck tattoo.
I've had a couple
She's
with
got the
piercings, but
she's
no
got the
neck tattoos.
tattoo on her calf and her lower back as well.
Odd one or
And
two like that as well.
the
One had a
piercings.
tattoo underneath.
Don't
One
forget
had
the
a tattoo underneath
piercings.
her breast. Quite. These. I'll tell you what it was actually. Funny enough, ironically, part of there was a little bit of the Dom sub thing going on as well, which I went with. Plus the old Christian Grey, 50 Shades of Grey thing was going on big time. And I rode that particular wave all the way into the shore. I was quite
You
happy to
should
play
on your
along with that
dating
idea.
profile. You could put, "I want to crush heads. My goal in life is crushing heads and crashing, cracking concrete."
Oh,
And see
believe me,
how many women would be
I would
into
think
that.
more along the lines of grinding pelvises, but you go with whatever you like, Steve.
But what Monster is saying, see, when I started using steroid, we're gonna get over steroid cycles. One of
Yeah,
my first cycles that I did was the old school classic Deca Debol and testosterone cycle. And man, did I blow up a lot. I blew up so much that I went from over the course of a year running the cycle twice. And we're gonna talk about the steroids in a bit. I went from 7% body fat to 17% body fat. And I had literally gained about 25 or 30 pounds over the course of a year. So I completely changed my physique. So it's a happy medium. And what Monster is saying is going from being skinny, having that endurance runner look, and then going to being bloated and having that bloated, power lifter look, with the bloated face, the dead fish moon face. There's got to be a happy medium in the middle. So I realized that going through that, but it was good that I experienced that difference because people would approach me differently, and it was funny because people sometimes before would call me skinny, and then afterwards I was having people call me, "Oh, you're fat, you're fat." So it's just like it's funny in literally a year span they called you being skinny to called you being fat. So there's a happy medium in between. So getting to that happy medium, where as Mobster said, you can walk on the beach and be confident in yourself and have people compliment you. And then we're talking about dating websites. Actually, it's funny because I put pictures of myself a few years ago on Facebook. We were doing some marketing on Facebook back in the day, and one of the things I noticed was literally within 2 days, I literally had like 5,000 friends. It was a bunch of middle-aged women or older women hitting me up who were really impressing my body, or gay dudes hitting me up wanting to talk. So it really does make a difference, how you look. And as Monster said, and on dating websites too, if I was on dating websites, I'd have women complimenting, "Oh, you have a really nice body." They, after the second or third email, they mention that. So if that's what you're striving for, you don't have to, when we talk about this topic, lean gains versus bulk. You don't have to go and if you're a skinny dude and go crazy on your bulk. You can just take your time. If I had to go back and do it over again, I would have taken my time more and not trying to gain so much weight so fast. Because in the process, you're going to gain a lot of water and a lot of fat. So do it the slow way and do it the right way, and it would really be a lot easier on your body, and you'd be happy with the results. So let's talk about this one, Mobster, how to train and diet for mass. So,
yes.
you want to start off on this one?
Yeah, look, let me refer to the skinny guys first, and I'll bring Steve back in for this. We still get on the forums and occasionally on these shows, Steve, a small percentage of people, relatively young again for the most part. It's very rarely going to be someone 30 plus, where they're talking about SARMs and they're talking about steroids. And yeah, we help them. We talk about cycles and what performance enhancing drugs and what Para Pharma products they can use. But as often as not, Steve, I've noticed, and this is just a small percentage now, as we said earlier on, You're talking about someone that can be 5'11", 6'1". I've seen a few of these, slightly above average height, and a couple were 135 motherfucking pounds. I was 175 pounds when I was 18, and that was the average height weight ratio. I thought I was skinny, and pictures of me at the time looked kind of skinny to me. But when I'm seeing someone asking me about steroids, I'm thinking, no, 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 no. You literally don't know how to eat, right? So if you are in a small percentage, we'll deal with that first before you use any Para Pharma products, and especially if you are underweight in this particular way. Unless your thing is to be kind of skinny slash muscular, like some sort of weird, funky perfume model or something. For the most part, I need to teach you more what to do with your knife and fork, and when it comes to actually putting food in your mouth and the importance of nutrition, than I need, or Steve needs, or anybody that helps us on these shows and on the forums needs to tell you, oh, take testosterone, take this, take no, 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 no. We need you to fucking eat. There might be, and I'm thinking of MK677 as an example, Steve, the occasional PED that's going to actually help you with your appetite. But there's no point recommending you take shitloads of steroids if you aren't working with that fork and knife and a plate. And it doesn't have to be crazy complicated, Steve. I mean, look, I can bulk, get bigger than I am right now, literally, and I've done this in the past, by adding, instead of having 3 meals, I add a fourth meal. And the fourth meal doesn't have to be a full-blown dinner or full-blown supper or, literally 12, 1,300 calories. It can be 500, 600, 700 calories, but it's actual food. It might be a couple of boiled eggs, a little bit of steak. It might be, a couple of slices of wholemeal toast, something like that. It doesn't have to be a weight gainer or whatever else, but do this consistently and you will slowly add muscular body weight, which is what you want. Maybe a little bit of acidosis, a little tiny bit of water, a little bit of fat, but you will gain weight. If you're not eating when you're in that situation, then all the steroids in the world they're going to bloat you up. You're going to have all the arguable side effects with estrogen, the issues that we're having to use an AI, and so on and so forth, and get none of the muscular gains. If you're very, very lucky, we referred to this in scientific studies before, you might gain 2 or 3 pounds, right? So it is super, super important. Now, equally, Steve, and I'll bring Steve in for this as well, equally, if you are a little bit overweight, and or you're looking to have lean muscular gains, the importance of the diet, and we'll get to the training momentarily, cannot be underestimated. So talk about, even for the average Joe who's
Yeah.
not super thin, Steve, the importance of nutrition.
Yeah, and look, food prep is going to be crucial and it simplifies things and it makes things easy. And, I like to keep things simple in life. You cannot depend on anyone making the food for you or delivering the food for you. If you're going to go that route, it's going to be extremely expensive to have a personal chef cooking the food for you. And that's what big time celebrities and athletes have. They have personal chefs come into their house for lunch and dinner that cook them healthy meals. Okay. So unless you fit that description or you're a trust fund baby, that's not going to happen. All right. And if you deliver your food with Uber Eats or you go to restaurants to eat your food or you go to fast food, now you're getting low quality food. And that's not the type of food you want to build good quality mass. So you're going to have to learn to food prep at some point. Might as well do it now. When I went out on my own, okay, during college, I was 18, 19 years old, went out, got a one bedroom apartment. Okay. I was so happy to be out on my own. I could bring girls over, I could do whatever I wanted, right? And one of the things I did, the first thing I did is I went down to Walmart and I bought a big box in the kitchen section of pots, pans, utensils, all that shit. They sell them. I think it was like 30, 40 bucks at the time. Now it's probably like 50, 60 bucks. So not that expensive. But it was, that's what I did because I knew I needed to fucking food prep my own food and cook my own food. I had to learn how to do this shit. You don't have mommy cooking you food anymore. Okay. Now there's better tricks that you can do now. There's some people that live out on their own. They go on their own. They don't cook even once. All they do is get their food delivered to them or they go out to eat. And I know people like this, and it's not just young people, Mobster. It's people your age. I know a lot of people your age who never once cooked, maybe a holiday, they might cook food, and it's very low quality food. So what you got to do, there's some nice options that you can do. A rice cooker. Now you say, Steve, I don't really like rice. I don't eat much rice. Well, rice cookers, the rice cookers that I have, okay, you can cook oatmeal, you can cook quinoa, you can cook vegetables like broccoli, asparagus, any vegetable you want, and you can cook rice. And it does the work for you. Literally, all you got to do is fill the fucking thing up with water, push a couple buttons, set it for the time, and it does the work for you. So that gets you covered on those things. Air fryer. Air fryers have been coming on a lot over the past few years as people have discovered them. Now, air fryers, you can cook potatoes very easily. Chicken cooks really well in air fryers. There's all kinds of things you can do in air fryers that I like to cook potatoes and chicken in the air fryer. Comes out perfectly in those, and there's different recipes you can do. You could cook any type of meat. You can cook fish, red meat, all kinds of things. I personally prefer cooking my fish and red meat another way, but the chicken and potatoes works really good in the air fryer. So I'm always cooking up chicken and potatoes in the air fryer. So that's done. You can get a grill, and I like to cook on the grill. You get an outdoor grill if you have a place to cook outdoors. A lot of parks have grills that you can literally just show up with a bag of charcoal and cook up on the grill, but that can get expensive. But if you have an apartment indoors, you can get a George Foreman grill, which is an indoor grill, and you can cook the meat on that. It cooks chicken, it cooks beef. So whether you have an indoor or outdoor grill, that's covered. Now you can cook any type of meat on there. You can cut up pieces of zucchini or squash, thin pieces, put them on there. Whatever else you want. You make shish kebab. There's all kinds of things you can do on a grill. So there's so many different food options and food prep options. And then the key with it is you make a lot of food and then you store it. So you store it in containers, you put it in your fridge, okay? And we have people on the forum, you can come on and read their logs, and they do this. You've got 8 different containers. You're putting your broccoli, chicken, rice in one. You're putting your steak, broccoli, asparagus, and potatoes in the other, and you kind of spread it out. And then that food will last you 3, 4, 5 days, and you're good. So twice a week, I will spend maybe an hour or two food prepping like that, and it's a lot of fun. I like the food prep. It's a lot of fun. Grilling is fun. Cooking is fun. Cutting up the food is fun. I really, really enjoy it, and it's a nice stress reliever as well. And now you have your food for the week. So whenever you go to work, you can take a box with you to work, throw it in the microwave, heat it up for a minute, and boom, now you have a meal. So this is going to be the key. The food prepping is going to be the key when it comes to nutrition because you're going to eat healthy food. You're going to know what's going into your body, and that's very, very important. And invest in some spices as well. Black pepper, salt, paprika. These are really good options. If you can tolerate garlic and onions, some people like garlic and onions. I don't like garlic and onions. They don't agree with my stomach. A lot of you with inflammatory issues like IBS or Crohn's, you should not be going near onions or garlic. But for those of you who are okay with it, it's perfectly fine. So that's what you got to do. Food prep is going to be the key here. And if you're not willing to food prep, you're not going to get the most out of your cycle. Mobster?
Yeah, just to finish off on the food thing, and I've made two notes, right? One is when I hear people say things, and Steve actually said this earlier on about certain people saying, "Oh, I don't like rice" or "I don't like vegetables." I'm old school. Man the fuck up and get it down your neck. I don't want to hear you complaining about food that you don't like, and then at the same time expecting some miracle food we've never heard of to exist that you do like because mummy brought you up on sugary custardy, sweet God knows what crap food, and you expect to get big and muscular gains. So do what you need to do to get big. This is about necessity. You decided you want to get as big as a house. You decided you want lean muscular gains. Do what needs to be done. Get it down your neck. Stop your bitching. And the other one, which is regards the, Steve's quite correct. Just to finish on this topic, Steve, there are far too many people my age, never mind younger, but it's more common amongst the younger people, because you've got Uber Eats, because you've got all this access, the food being brought to you that's already been presented and made ready for you. There are far too many people that if the grid went down tomorrow, Steve, they would fucking starve because they don't know how to eat. I know people that have moved into places like Steve said, with those house setting up kits that Steve referred to, and it's like a joke in a movie, Steve. They open the fridge or they open up the larder or the cupboard or something in their kitchen, and if it's not some sort of like tea or coffee thing or some 4-year-old tin of baked beans, that's it. They literally have no fresh vegetables and no meat in the freezer and no chicken breast that they can cook up and prepare on the grill outside, even if the gas and electricity's been cut off because the grid's gone down. They would starve. I'm lucky enough that they used to teach you this stuff at school, and that my mum was a little bit of a thing with my mum to sit there, quite pleasant to see, even quite relaxing, and a nice social family thing to learn to cook just basic stuff. I can cook a roast dinner from scratch. I don't have to, but I can. And the idea that you can't, Mummy's not going to wipe your bum anymore, boys. You have to go out and do these things. And there is a reward to it. It will be all your own work. You did the cooking. You did the preparation. You ate those things you didn't like. Now look at you. Big as a house or lean and muscular. And that will be down to you. So the reward is right there. I want to talk about training now. And again, we're talking about gaining mass. We're talking about putting on lean muscular gains. We're not talking about getting cut. We're not talking about getting shredded. We're not even talking in a particular way as a focus on getting ready for the beach or a wedding. We are literally talking about mass and or lean muscular gains. So the training that you need to do needs to be stimulatory enough that your body responds by adding muscle. Your body responds by getting bigger. And the reality of that is there are occasionally, and it kind of sexy and gets people traction, certain pseudo programs. I'm thinking of front page of men's fitness type magazines and occasionally clickbaity videos on YouTube and whatever else that have you doing some sort of bizarre Mongolian mountain tribe, something or other routine. And I'm making this up. It's not really Mongolian. Bizarre kind of routine that might work for the person that put the video out. But the truth of the matter is thus. The big, heavy, compound, powerliftery, strongman-y kind of exercises. So, as Steve said in the past, pressing weight overhead, pressing weight off your chest, lifting weights up to your chest in a rowing type motion, heavy curls, squats, deadlift, dips, chins was a big favorite of Steve. The exercises that uses the most amount of muscles are called the compounds. Isolation type exercises have their place, but they use the focused on muscle. So, for example, a concentration curl is a focused, isolating type exercise for your bicep, whereas a cheat curl is going to work your bicep, it's going to work your upper back, it's going to work your grip. Deadlift, if you're not using, I think even amongst bodybuilders, strongmen, whatever you like, it's still described as the most basic, you can't cheat kind of exercise. You can go wide with your feet, but that's about it. There are suits you can wear, but there's way more suits and ways of doing squats and bench press, kind of cheating the movement just to move huge amounts of weight. Deadlift is there's a weight on the floor, you've got to bend down and pick that motherfucker up. It's just that simple. And the real simple stuff, dips, etc., these are all going to work multiple muscle groups, aka the compounds, and they are the ones that are most likely to build up the bulk or the mass of the muscle. Imagine it thus when we talk about these things, and this is an example that's been used before. You are a sculptor, and you are a sculptor of, as per most of our listeners, but not all of them, the male physique. And you are starting with clay, and you have a little stick figure man to slap this clay onto. To begin with, you're putting on clay on the arms, clay on the legs, clay on the chest, clay on the abs, and so on and so forth. And eventually, at some point, you get the stick and the brush and the other tools that you use for shaping the clay, and you pull clay away to reveal the chest muscles, more clay away for the abs. Think of it in those terms, that combination of eating and doing the big, heavy, hard exercises. Those are slapping the mass on. Those are slapping the clay on. And there's an element of, when we've just done a show on this, when we talked about pain when using steroids in a previous show, I believe the one episode 144, Steve, when we talked about you need to be kind of comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that means if, for example, let's use the press, whether it's a barbell or dumbbells, whatever. Let's say that your regular overhead press, whatever version you do, is a lovely, very nice 100, 120 pounds for multiple sets of 3 to 12, 8 to 12 reps. That would be great. And this is what shaped your delts. If you want your delts to grow, you're going to be looking at 140, 150, 200 pounds. You're going to literally need to start thinking lower repetitions, 4, 6, 7, 8 repetitions, but with a lot more weight. And that's going to force your shoulders to grow. It's going to force, to a lesser degree, your triceps, a little bit on your forearms, to some small degree, your trap muscles, but specifically the target muscle is going to be worked at the same time as the other muscles, is those delts. And the reality of the situation is that I would say 99.9% of the time, people with big shoulders are heavy benchers and heavy presses. It's just how it is. So you want to get big boulder shoulders. You want to put mass on your shoulders. It's going to be heavier pressing than you do right now. And you apply that same thought process, the same regulation, if you like, to chest or back, bicep, tricep, forearms, hamstrings, quads, calves. More weight for the same number of reps or slightly less is just going to force the stimulus, force your body to grow. Combine that with fat. So talk about the importance of training in this particular regard, Steve. And I know that you're a big fan of chins, for example, as a massive back builder, grip builder, a compound exercise.
So one of the dudes over the years that I befriended, he was also a football coach, and he had the biggest arms I've ever seen in my life. And he would always talk about it. He said, "You ever see me doing curls?" And there's a section in the gym where there's a bunch of dumbbells. And he's like, "Do you ever see me in that section?" I said, "No, never seen you in that section." He's like, "I don't do curls." So I'm like, "Well, how did you get your huge biceps?" And he's like, "All I do for my biceps is two things. I do rows and I do chin ups. That's it." And that grows my chest. And it really opened my eyes. It was back when I was in my early to mid 20s at the time. And I was like, wow, that's really fucking interesting. But I was like, you know what? That makes sense, because that's really you're comparing isolation movements to compound movements. Now, when you go on YouTube, and Mobster mentioned this, you go on social media, it's not as entertaining to watch someone doing rows or doing chin ups and struggling with chin ups as it is to watch them doing the bicep curls and standing there in front of the mirror and showing off their muscle and admiring themselves in the mirror and having the veins popping out of their biceps. It's not as fun to do a video. So you got to keep in mind these videos where you see these guys lifting weight. It's more about getting clicks. It's more about entertaining you. It's not about actually showing you how to build that muscle. So if you're a skinny dude and you're like, I want to build up my arms, you're not going to build up your arms by standing in front of the mirror, jacking off to yourself in front of the mirror and watching yourself do curls. You're going to build the strong biceps and the strong arms by going and doing the chin ups, especially the weighted chin ups, by doing the rows. Those are what's going to build the arms. And then on the flip side, the other side of your arm is the triceps. Now, what builds strong triceps? Is it standing there and doing, rope pull downs? Okay, you can do those. Very, very popular. I've seen some old school bodybuilders talk about that. They really like that. But in reality, dips, especially weighted dips, are going to force them to get stronger and force them to grow. So, yes, you can go do your bicep curls. I like to do bicep curls. I like to do drop sets. I like to mire myself in front of the mirror, jack off in front of the mirror, watching my biceps, with that movement. It's really nice. It's really fun. You walk out of the gym with your biceps popping out and the vascularity and everything. That's great. But that's not how I built my arms. I built my arms by listening to that dude. And for 20 years, that's how I've been training my arms. And that's why my arms are so big. Of course, it's genetics too, because I have shorter, lanky, I don't have the big, lanky arms. I have the shorter arms. So I'm going to build my biceps and have a different peak. But I built my arms from those chin ups, from the monkey bars, from the rows, and that also hits your back as well. So you have to work on those compound lifts, and those are going to be the key for you to grow and train your body to grow. And as you get stronger, of course, your muscles are going to have to adapt to that, and they're going to have to grow along with it. So that's where you're going to see the biggest benefits. And at the end of the day, we can go to the gym and do a bunch of leg extensions and call it a day. But is that really going to grow your legs? No, you've got to do the squats, the ass to grass squats, the box squats, the front squats. Okay, I'm more impressed if you can go do 150 pounds front squat than I am if you throw on 400 pounds and do a regular squat behind your neck. I really am, because front squats are much more challenging, and they activate more muscles and they target more muscles, and it spreads things around, and it really forces you to use correct form and not lean a certain way or not cheat or not bend your spine a different way than you should. So I'm more impressed with seeing correct form in the gym, is my point. I'm more impressed with seeing correct form on the deadlift, correct form on the squat, correct form on anything, rather than seeing someone go and do a bunch of weight. That to me is cringeworthy when I see someone. So correct form is very important as well when you're doing this, because you're just going to injure yourself and you're not going to learn the correct ways to do this. So, and again, it's hard because on the internet, the videos, they're not there to educate you, they're there to entertain you. So, doing the weight correctly and doing less weight is going to get less clicks than someone who's doing 2 or 3 times the amount of weight but not doing it with correct form. You see what I'm saying? So that's the issue. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe read a book on it. Maybe,
Yeah.
befriend someone at the gym like I did, who will teach you the basics and teach you correct form. But there's
Yes.
there's definitely ways. I think that anybody can really study this and learn how to correctly do it in the gym. So touch on that really quick, Monster, and
Here's
we'll
the
move
thing,
on.
just to finish on that, and it comes from when we used to have a lot of bodybuilding magazines, Steve. And even I didn't understand that this was taking place until after a few years. So, and I use the late Joe Weider as an example, and he wasn't the only magazine publisher that did this. Magazines would be full of in shape bodybuilders doing what appeared to be, as we've just talked about, sexy isolation exercises because it made the muscle pop, made the veins come up. It would be sprayed with water or oil to look good for the camera. And they'd be in shape because a photo shoot was set around the time of just before, during, or just after a competition. And then the photographs would be used over the next 12 months. In reality, he was only in that shape for maybe 3 weeks. And his peak shape, as per today, Steve, for 2 or 3 days. But that's when the photographs were taken. And the same rules apply, if you like, for social media or videos online. I would argue perhaps the only thing that social media and videos have made certain professional athletes, I'm thinking of Larry Wills and other people that do a lot of stuff on YouTube, etc. Stevens, they can't get too out of shape because no, they're not going to sell products or recommend products that you should buy if they're bloated and fat. Whereas in reality, it used to be the situation that only you didn't look a certain particular way all year round, but it gave that appearance. Let's talk about now specific mass type products that we would
Yeah.
recommend that Para Pharma produces, as well as, and then we'll move on to, of course, the lean mass
Yeah, let's
product or
start
lean
with
gain products.
let's start with talking the oral steroids from Para Pharma. So I'll
Yeah,
give you a
yeah,
couple. I'll give you a couple. Anadrol and Dianabol, and I'll let you touch on Dianabol, Mobster, because I know you really like Dianabol. You have a lot of experience with Dianabol. I Look, if there's an oral steroid that I would tell you that's going to put on a lot of mass in a short amount of time, and that would be Anadrol. And Anadrol is called A-bombs for a reason. So 50 milligrams a day solo of Anadrol for 4 weeks would literally transform your physique. If you have 4 weeks and you said, Steve, I want to go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, I want to use proper form, I want to do compound lifts, and I promise you I will prep my food and eat healthy for those 4 weeks. What can you give me that I can take for those 4 weeks? I'll be like, Anadrol, 50 milligrams a day. Anadrol is all you need, bro. You don't need to take anything else with it. Just take the fucking Anadrol, bust your ass in the gym, but train smart and fucking eat, and eat healthy, nutritious food and food prep. You will fucking get amazing results on that Anadrol in 4 weeks. It will blow you up and it will get you stronger like fucking crazy in those 4 weeks. So that's what I would recommend. And look, for me, 25 milligrams a day is all I need because Anadrol is that fucking potent, but you can go up to 50 milligrams. So Para Pharma has excellent Anadrol. Mobster, talk about Dianabol a little bit.
Diana Bowl used to be called, Steve, as Steve knows, the breakfast of champions. And this is probably because it was one of those foundational steroids. Anadrol and perhaps is now, but for Debo was probably the first steroid of any kind that a lot of people took back in the day. And it was certainly my first steroid of any kind when I started using PEDs. My first two cycles, 37 years of age was my first cycle. I waited a long time, that which also helped as well, of course, Steve, in terms of my response. Um, for me, it was guaranteed that if I took 30 to 50 milligrams a day for 4 to 8 weeks, similar kind of dosages to Anadrol, similar kind of time scale, Steve, I would guarantee from experience that I would put on cycle approximately 10 pounds, which was quite good. And I would keep just by eating and training manipulation post cycle 5 to 6 of those 10 pounds. Now, that when you know how it works and you know that you're going to respond to it in a certain way, you know that you're going to keep that. And I could have done, for example, Steve, 3 8-week cycles a year with plenty of time off in between. That's 18 fucking pounds, listeners. That is definitely a bulker for me. And the great advantage of Debo was the pump, the guaranteed gains, the feel good factor, an increase in your appetite, and literally being that much bigger gives you better leverage. Using an anabolic steroid gives you that little bit of an enhancement for your strength. So, in a way, not only was the appetite boost and the size boost going to make you stronger, but the steroid did as well, which of course doubles down in terms of the effects on the body that enables you to lift heavier, enables you to feel stronger. And again, really, really simple, really, really straightforward. Let's go a bit back and forth on this one, Steve. So, for example, and I'm just referring to the orals here, and I've actually used this for this particular reason. Anavar as a oral for lean mass gains, and in my case, also for enhancing my strength. I would always, and I was relatively big when I was using this for my competitions, I would add about 5 pounds on cycle. If I'd manipulated my diet, which I didn't do at the time, I would expect to keep from that, Steve, a relatively lean 3 pounds of muscle tissue. And that doesn't sound much, but Anavar is probably milder in the overall effects on your body. You could probably, again, 4 to 8 weeks at 30 to 50 milligrams a day. 50 seems to be the sweet spot. And again, it's slightly higher than the Dynabol dosage, for example, Steve, in terms of response. I've always had great response at 30 milligrams. I have pushed it to 50. But for me, the idea, again, lean mass gains, and let's do that same example that I just talked about. 3 cycles a year, if I only use NFL, would be 15 pounds of lean muscle tissue. Now, realistically, I'm probably looking for 8 to 10 pounds over all of these cycles. You don't need to gain 20 pounds, and we could talk about that in a minute when we talk about other cycles. The reality of the situation is I'm going to be very much more comfortable with 3 to 5 pounds of lean muscle tissue and Steve. Less side effects with NFR. The only arguable issue, which we discussed on other shows, is those hella pumps. So, what about that or another one, Steve, as a lean mass gainer from the oral selection before we talk about injectables?
I would say maybe Superdrol, and Superdrol is a very powerful one, but Parapharma does carry it. And Superdrol is one of those that's going to get you very strong and very harden you up a lot. So you'll definitely notice your size is bigger and more strength, but it's very, very toxic. So you don't want to use more than I'd say 10 to 20 milligrams a day because of the toxicity. So
What
that's
about, Steve? I'm thinking also just for either of these lean or mass type orals, and we could talk about this also with regards to injectables. I'm thinking of two things. I'll let Steve on the Turanabol, Steve, but also using Provaron. which they do with a 25 milligram pill. Now, that both injectable and oral cycles, listeners, because it will boost the free testosterone of the oral or injectable.
Yeah.
But talk about Turinabol specifically, because I know you've
Yeah, I
got
wouldn't
experience
run
as
if
a
you're
lean
looking.
mass gainer.
Yeah, I wouldn't use Toronto for this reason. I'd use Toronto if you're doing a recomposition or a cut. And then the Proviron is a really good option if you're going to be using DECA. So we're going to get into the injectables now. And we'll start with DECA since you kind of led us into that segue. So DECA, look, it's a testosterone derivative, but has less androgenic effects. So it's actually going to boost your appetite and your mood much better in a lot of cases than testosterone for that reason, because you're getting the benefits of testosterone without the androgenic effects. So you'll have actually it's more mild than testosterone, but it is a good idea when you're using DECA to stack a DHT derivative to balance out the dihydronandrolone DHN effects of the DECA so you don't get DECA dick. So that's why Mobster mentioned Proviron. So that would be a situation where Proviron could be added if you're using DECA. And a dose of DECA, anywhere from 200 to 400 milligrams a week, is pretty standard. So it's a great option for bulking. When I use DECA, I was hungry all the time on it. Like you wake up hungry, you work out, you're hungry. Lunch, you're hungry. For dinner, you're hungry. It's like it boosts your hunger like crazy. So it's a
Yeah.
great option for you to have your food prep ready. Talk about testosterone and sustanon.
Right, regular listeners will know that my Deca slash Sustanon cycles are my absolute favorite for getting as big as a house. I will also add that Steve's quite correct, and I've described this on other shows, Steve, when I said my first 2, 3 Deca slash Sustanon cycles, I couldn't get my head round, and it was kind of a weird sensation of you are eating a meal, Steve, perhaps your third meal of the day, and even as you are satiating, we should be kind of satisfied by putting food into your belly because you're hungry and because you've trained hard. And I couldn't understand how I was already thinking and hungry for the next meal. So if you struggle with your appetite, the Deca slash sustenance cycles for me were like, what the? How am I? Why am I hungry? I'm literally eating food right now. I'm thinking of the next meal already while I'm eating. It was just crazy. And I would blow the fuck up on those cycles. I wasn't looking to try and stay bigger. So, but I would go from 280 to 300 pounds in those. Nowadays, as being over 300 pounds, I'm more likely to adapt my training and adapt my food to keep those size. But it benefited me in the short term to be bigger and stronger. And that's why it was an absolute blow the fuck up on this stuff. I want to differentiate you a little bit, Steve. I would argue, and Steve's quite correct, with all forms of testosterone. I do incredibly well on one or two kinds, but I don't do well on others. But I will specifically talk about testosterone in amphate. My strong man buddies loved it. We were all using the same product from the same source. And for whatever reason, and this is specifically personal to me, they would get that 5 or 10 pounds heavier on their testosterone in amphate cycles. There'd be something else in there as well. Get bigger, get up to the top end of the body weights for the classes they were competing in, which the people I'm thinking about were 231 pounds, 105 kilos. But for me, it was a meh kind of drug, and I don't know why. I've responded much better to Decadate and to testosterone. No idea why when I was doing the same products from the same source at the same dosage as they was. But for the rest of you that do well, when I'm thinking of anadrol, what we referred to earlier on, I would argue that most people would do incredibly well with testosterone, for example, in amphate. So, I mean, the classic argument, Steve, was always going to be 500 milligrams for 8 to 12 weeks. You might look at taking something else with that, and we could talk about that as well. But let's keep it real simple. 3 to 600 milligrams, 8 to 12 weeks, especially if you're new to PEDs, in combination with a diet. With an amphate, Steve, 2 jabs a week, three at the most injections, obviously dividing the 3 to 600. So, for example, 600 would be three injections of 200 milligrams for, as I say, 8 to 12 weeks. Keep it real simple, like Steve said earlier in the show. Completely uncomplicated. Certainly when you're trying to see how you respond to certain particular products, using a good source like Para Pharma and combining that with training and diet, I would argue that most listeners listening to the show in those circumstances would probably be looking at something like an 8 pound gain total on cycle over the 12 weeks, Steve, and keeping 5 to 6 pounds off cycle if they manipulate their diet and training afterwards. And that, got to be honest, listeners, once or twice a year, £8 becomes £16, and kept gains becomes £10 to £12. And that is, especially at the beginning of your PED use, uh, training this particular way, etc., not looking to get ripped at this particular point in time. That's fantastic, Steve. What other forms of testosterone and other choices would you look at? And we're looking again, sheer math and or lean gains that you could recommend as well for the listeners' benefit.
Well, Para Pharma has all you need. They have the shorter esters, they have the intermediate
Yeah,
esters, they have the long esters, they have blends. So you could check those out. And at the end of the day, testosterone is testosterone. If you want to run a shorter cycle, run a shorter ester. If you want to run a longer cycle, run a longer cycle. So dosing anywhere from 100 milligrams a week if you're going to go a TRT route and use it as kind of a base in a cycle, or you could go use it solo at 500 milligrams or add that to a cycle. And some people will go even higher who are more advanced. So the next one, equipoise. And equipoise is much like DECA. It's a testosterone derivative, very mild versus other steroids. You can run a dose of 300 to 600 milligrams a week. And equipoise, I like equipoise. It's a good one. It's not the best bulking option, but it's going to be more mild bulking. So if you're looking for more mild, lean bulking, equipoise would be the one. And then the last one we're going to talk about, the big one here, trenbolone. And trenbolone, the big misconception out there I see by people that they think trenbolone, oh, trenbolone's just a cutter or just a recomper. Wrong. It's one of the best bulking steroids on earth. Um, and look, when you're running tren, you will get big, you will get strong, and you would, in a lot of cases, get ripped at the same time. It really does everything for you. Um, and you want to basically make sure you prep a lot of fruits, a lot of veggies, a lot of brown rice, a lot of potatoes, a lot of carbs because you want to spread your carbs out when you're using tren. It is such a sponge when it comes to carbs that if you don't spread your carbs out properly, you'll end up with a lot more side effects. So it's very, very important to do that and make sure you stay extremely hydrated on it. So fruit is a big weapon when you're using tren for that reason. So a dose of 200 to 350 milligrams a week is perfect. More advanced users will run it more. And tren is one of those that you want to save it to a situation where you're advanced. You don't want to just hop on tren right away. So we got a few minutes left, Mobster. Why don't we get into Para Pharma quality gear? And I'll touch on this before I let you in and finish out the show. But look, the nice thing about Para Pharma is they have excellent products, they have fast service, and they have great prices. They always have different promotions going on, so you can save money. You can use that extra money to buy the things we talked about earlier in this podcast, like the air fryer, like the rice cooker, like good quality food so that you can cook it, like your cookware and your silverware and all that stuff. Good set of knives. So the money you save, you can use it for that. They also have reps on the forums. Quad Sweep is the main rep on the forum if you come on evolution.org. And the nice thing about Quad Sweep is he helps people with their cycles day in and day out. A lot of people message him. He gets a lot of messages every day. And he tells me that he spends a lot of his time replying to these messages, helping people put together cycles. So if you have a question about a cycle that you want to use with Para Pharma, you can hit him up, or you can post the log, or you can post a question, and he'll always be there to answer for you and guide you and show you which Para Pharma product to use. And the good thing about someone like Quad Sweep and the other reps on the forums, who are on the forums, is they're not trying to sell you a bunch of steroids. And that's not what Para Pharma tries to do. Para Pharma wants you to have success. They want you to do it the safe way. They want you to do it the right way. And they want you to get your goals. They're not all about, yeah, I'm going to sell you 10 different steroids on a cycle and have you run 5 grams of gear on a cycle. No, that's not what they're all about. They want to keep their customers, and they've grown in popularity over the past 5 years like you would not believe. So a lot of people love Para Pharma. You can go on many different forums, not just our forum, and they'll talk about Para Pharma. It's a 5 out of 5 star rating brand, and this is why we talk about them. So, Mobster, we have a minute or two left. Why don't you touch on
Yeah,
your
look,
experience with Para Pharma? Yeah.
I've literally used Para Pharma products for a cut. One of their RIP products, RIP 150 or cut 150. And I've talked about going from 327 to 320. And when I went back up to 327, there's a little bit of trend there, guys. So I recomped, even though there wasn't the intention, and kept, as I told Steve before in his other shows, my smaller waist went down 2 belt loops, 2 belt notches, and stayed there. Even when I went up to immediately followed it with a bulk and went up to 336 afterwards. So I've used their product. I know that it's no issues with injecting. I know that I got great results. Well, if I was recommending a company to you guys that sells cars or builds houses or whatever else, you don't want a company that's only been around 5 minutes and barely got a reputation. So how does that work? Okay, well, Parapharma, for example, looking at their main website, Steve, as we do these shows, 14 plus years. You don't get to last a decade plus by being an untrustworthy, shitty kind of company. You build your reputation and you keep your reputation. Steve's quite correct. We can go on to other forums, not just the ones that are part of the family of forums that we and Steve are involved in, but other forums. And everybody's got their favorite brand and they've all got their own sources and advertisers and whatever else. And you go, if you mention Parapharma on those forums, it's still given a thumbs up. That's not being influenced by advertising bucks or promotion or the favorite source of the moderators or whatever else. It's literally influenced by people liking the company's product because they fucking work. Cross forum promotion, cross forum popularity. That's super duper. When we talk about companies being one-stop shops, Parapharma has 45 plus products. So look at that stuff. Go onto their site, check out the approved sources, make sure the company you're buying their product from is on the list. Check out the original formulation and look at the test results, guys. Hopefully, we've given you some information on getting as big as a house as well as lean muscular gains. Let us know your thoughts as always. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. The podcasts are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.